The term neurodiversity describes the natural variation of neurotypes which the majority deem to be abnormal. Neurotypes, including autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, are often perceived as disruptions to a neurotypically molded society. As a result, many neurodiverse individuals feel isolated. They believe they lack a purpose due to their predetermined obstacles. In a verbally demanding world, the neurodiverse person wants to express how they feel, but the role of communication creates a barrier between the neurodivergent and their graspable potential. The education around neurodiversity has fortunately seen an increase in recent years, credited to its uprise in positive visibility within mass culture. However, it is impossible to ignore the constant waves of derogatory and dehumanizing narratives which are spewed by key figures. Autism Speaks push on eugenical treatment, Donald Trump's stance that disabled people should just die, as well as exaggerated depictions in beloved television and film. High influence creates a high level of misconception. We can draw from televised representations and their impact on the neurodiverse perception. Characters like Sheldon Cooper of The Big Bang Theory, or The Good Doctor Sean Murphy, focus on the Hollywood savant stereotype, which infantilizes and generalizes the neurodiverse model. On the other hand, this video will consider creative mediums as a form of self-advocacy, self-discovery, and self-worth, as the neurodivergent community realizes their value as a member of society. Creative mediums, whether visual or literary, could break the communicative wall which prevents the neurodiverse community from expressing their internal emotions. Art may provide differently minded people with a way to share their experiences with the public eye, possibly lowering the stigma and misinformation that surrounds them. Referring to artistic expression as a vocal device considers the various forms of art as different languages, which the neurodiverse may pursue as tools of communication. This investigation will consider the potential vitality of creativity as a non-vocal method of speech, which may apply to those with social disadvantages. Creative guidance as a tool for communication may give neurodiverse individuals the opportunity to not only contribute to workspaces, but to also share their experiences with a wider audience. By the end of this video, creative mediums as a form of empowerment for the neurodiverse, as well as their role in self-regulation, will become clearer. In addition, exposure to creative applications will inform industries on more inclusive approaches, which allow the neurodiverse to function amongst their neurotypical peers. Though neurodiversity as a whole will be discussed, I will be focusing on autism as a primary topic for this video essay. The word neurodiversity was coined by Judy Singer, who recognized the unique ways the brain structures as a natural occurrence in humanity. Singer argued that conditions like autism, ADHD, and dyslexia are not conditions to be fixed. Instead, these conditions are valid expressions of the diversity of the human experience. Neurodiversity refers to the cognitive differences that make up the human experience and exist outside of the norm. These differences may create barriers that affect the way neurodivergent individuals communicate with the world around them, especially in a society that is not structured with them in mind. Historical attitudes echo Singer's statement, most notably the treatment of people with mental and physical disabilities at the Willowbrook State School during the 1940s, where residents received both physical and sexual abuse. In addition to neglectful supervision, many were subjected to experimental eugenical practices. For example, children with cognitive differences were forcefully infected with hepatitis and treated as human guinea pigs to better understand disease transmission and immunity. Willowbrook helped to pass a law benefiting disabled rights, so you would hope that the scrutiny amongst the differently minded would change for the better. Unfortunately, rigid ideologies are still present in the modern day. The online realm acts as a catalyst for misinformation, which spreads amongst the masses. A recent example is the hysteria around the COVID-19 vaccine rollout and its supposed connection to cognitive deficiency development, which was later proven false. As previously discussed, widespread exposure to media has the power to cause great harm, but if used positively, it can help change the modern-day view of the neurodiverse community. However, more positive portrayals of neurodivergent characters in film and television have started to change the way audiences understand neurodiverse people. For instance, Australian series Heartbreak High portrays autism through Quinny, played by female autist and advocate Chloe Hayden. By breaking the norms of neurodiverse representation, Heartbreak High provides a realistic and informative display of the neurodiverse condition, especially considering how underrepresented female autists are in televised media. Despite positive inclusion within pop culture, much more reform is still needed to shift perspectives on the neurodiverse. Prominent foundations still push eugenical treatments and hide behind the facade of a supportive charity, thus reinforcing the notion that neurodiverse traits need to be abolished. These ignorant ideals only worsen the neurodivergent sense of isolation in society. Today, 20% of the world's population is considered neurodiverse. This commonly includes conditions such as ASD, ADHD, and dyslexia. Having said this, the vast spectrum of neurodiversity is complex, given the various forms it undertakes. It is important to stray away from generalizing experiences. Despite sharing identical diagnoses on the DSM-5, neurodiversity acknowledges that atypical experiences will vary from person to person. This is why visual aids of expression can provide clearer communication, which benefits a greater understanding of cognitive variance, especially as a non-verbal instrument for those who find vocal communication improbable. In the current age of disinformation, sharing our experiences can create a great impact. Whether it is to an audience or just one person, it is a step closer to a future that recognises the neurodiverse community as functioning members of society, a future that recognises us for our talents, not our deficits. Many notable neurodiverse individuals attribute their differences in cognition to their success. To elaborate, Temple Grandin's Thinking in Pictures expands on how recognising your neurodiverse talents can provide self-worth. Grandin introduces the concept of the visual thinker, suggesting that visual aids allow us to absorb information coherently. Grandin is modern-day proof that acknowledging and harnessing your neurodiverse traits can lead to fruitful possibilities. To emphasise my stance on creativity's link with neurodiversity, we will begin to examine various neurodiverse artists and practitioners. By doing so, we can see how the neurodiverse experience can manifest into a piece of visual expression. To cover all bases, we will look at various mediums and different art forms that they use in relation to the neurodiverse experience. Firstly, we'll delve into examples from the world of fine art photography. Hands-on processes have the ability to present direct viewpoints and imagine depictions of the internal state of being. To begin with, let's discuss Erin Lefebvre's Liam's World. Though Lefebvre is not neurodiverse herself, this photographic work engages her 19-year-old autistic brother, Liam. Lefebvre accompanies a series of portraits and handwritten text by her brother, which I think is aiding the purpose of this work. The artist could have easily taken a typographic approach, simply noting Liam's words. However, Liam's role as the scriber tells us he is directly communicating his thoughts with us. There is nothing to be implied or overanalyzed. This series shows us an honest perspective which does not dehumanize the neurodiverse community. On that note, I would like to discuss my practice and how a creative medium has allowed me to express myself freely and find a purpose in a world where I feel isolated. To give some context, I'm a late diagnosed autistic adult and find photography to be an effective non-verbal device. Throughout my early academic career, I've always considered myself more engaged with visually dominant subjects such as art and photography. This brings us back to Grandin's idea of the visual thinker. To me, creative learning freed me from the rules and linguistics that would surround me daily. It is a break from the overload of information, which I still struggle to cope with. So I would like to introduce two projects of mine, which speak of my experience as an autistic person. My first project is titled A Figure of Eight. This 6-minute video piece acts as a one-sided conversation between the observer and the subject, where the observer questions the atypical characteristics of the neurodiverse individual. The subject appears non-responsive. However, their body language displays that they feel overstimulated by the situation, which is emphasized by incorporating the multi-layered video. This brings me to my current ongoing project, Fail. Considering the theory of somatics, in other words, sound visualization, I'm investigating how internal stimuli responses can be externalized. This project arises from the stigma and disinformation which is spread due to the neurodiverse community's ability to mask their bodily responses. To combat this, I aim to produce a body of non-representational representations, which directly communicate how those with invisible disabilities feel in spaces that are built with the neurotypical in mind. Mediums such as art and photography can provide the neurodiverse with an almost instantaneous release of expression. When considering various processes, there are many options that can apply to the needs of neurodiverse people. I'm more inclined to use analog processes in the darkroom, because the environment is completely void of negative stimulation. Before considering performance, I want to reaffirm why positive and realistic portrayals are important to the neurodiverse. Many examples of visual media, including film and television, can be held responsible for creating inaccurate and damaging displays of the autistic community. Referring back to the term Hollywood autism, the way autistic people are represented in visual media has followed a very stereotypical and narrow-minded model, which not only generalizes us, but also encourages negative attitudes towards us. Take Sheldon Cooper, for example. Across the Big Bang Theory's 12-season run, Cooper's neurodiverse traits are vilified by the cast, causing him to take on a deuterogonist role. Sheldon is written to be ignorant and childlike, and the ensemble often seems to put up with his atypical behaviour. If we consider the popularity of this show, it can be argued that its widespread exposure may influence how people perceive the full scope of autism. If you reside within the autism sphere, you may be familiar with an organisation called Autism Speaks. At first glance, you'd assume that they strive for autism advocacy and enlightenment. However, Autism Speaks has become notorious for its push on eugenical treatment, which is highly frowned upon in the medical world. Their infamous advertising campaign, I Am Autism, shows their true ideologies towards the autistic community. At the beginning of the video, there is a very ominous presence. The narrator plays the role of autism, speaking like a wicked spirit. The derogatory language which is used is alienating and fear-mongering, making autistic people sound like blood-sucking parasites rather than human beings. If you insist on being an advocate for the autistic community, reinforcing the narrative that autistic people are a burden to their families will do the exact opposite. So, to conclude my point, performative representation, which not only recognises but celebrates autistic people, can be impactful in the incline of neurodiverse acceptance. Performance as an artistic medium amalgamates the various ways the body can be used as a tool of expression, including performance art, dance, and music. We can look at Prue Stevenson's Expend as an example of performance art. Using a body like a makeshift paintbrush, Stevenson explores the value of self-regulation in the art world and how expending excess energy is appropriate in the creative context. Speaking as an autistic artist, she considers how many autistic people are shunned from openly showing their neurodiverse traits. Stevenson's use of Taekwondo links to the premise that certain spaces, like a Taekwondo arena, encourages self-regulation. Next, we will look at contemporary dance and how it can be used as a mode of neurodiverse communication. Like Stevenson's Expend, performance art speaks directly to the audience, whether vocal or non-vocal. Contemporary dance can silently convey a narrative, drawing the viewer closer to inspect what is being told. Intricate choreography can raise awareness of certain matters, which is further informed when the performers speak from personal experience. Diane Botelli's Diversity Typical is an example of how dance can speak to the neurodiverse experience. Diversity Typical is also an example of self-regulation through performance, by using the whole body as a vehicle. In this case, performers of the Movio Dance Company mimic gestures commonly associated with the neurodiverse response. These gestures, known as stimming, are autonomous responses to environmental stimuli. Many members of the autistic community feel the need to suppress these actions to fit in with societal conventions. However, Diversity Typical tears down the mask and brings these hidden traits to the forefront. This performance piece celebrates cognitive diversity and addresses what the neurodiverse considers the norm. To conclude our case studies, we will investigate the role of sound in relation to neurodiverse expression. This will be divided into two categories, music and sound alone. To begin with, music can be considered one of the most widespread ways of getting the point across. Music is diverse at its core, with many genres and subgenres it encapsulates. It can be loud or quiet, fast or slow. The flexibility of music can help transcend across infinite subject matters. From the neurodiverse perspective, listening to a well-known musician speak about their atypical experience can reassure the average neurodiverse consumer that they are not alone in their struggles. Earlier this year, Darren Weeks, who you may know as the frontman of IDK How, or former bassist of Panic at the Disco, opens up about his late autism diagnosis at the age of 40. Upon his release of Gloom Division, Weeks expresses how he's still on a journey of self-discovery. To quote Weeks, "My whole life, I'd been wearing a mask I didn't know I was wearing." Across his expansive collection of creative works, Weeks has utilised music as a way to commentate on the world around him. Songs such as Social Climb, where he investigates society's desire for high social status, or Idiots of Oz, where Dan emphasises that we should not care how the world perceives us. Though Weeks has not explicitly commended his neurodiversity to his success as a musician, he has shown how music can be used as both an audible and visual medium of communication. Finally, let us dissect the role of sound art. To close our investigation of creative works, I would like to reintroduce my project, Veil, in relation to sound art. In this project, I use sound as a catalyst to bring my work to life. I'm hypersensitive to sound, especially when those sounds begin to overlap each other. Veil revolves around the notion of autism as an invisible disability, meaning my response to overwhelming stimuli manifests itself internally. By applying the somatics theory, I'm able to actively visualize how I feel within the space. Now, we can consider how creative mediums can be applied within education. Looking back at my time at school as an undiagnosed autistic student, I remember the academic environment to be loud and crowded. This chaos was broken during lesson periods where my learning abilities were tested. The weekly toll was strenuous for autistic pupils, who must suppress and master neurodiverse traits to comply with their neurotypical peers. And let's not forget the heightened bullying culture towards autistic students, which only increases their anxieties. Many schools worldwide already provide spaces like sensory rooms, which can offer a secluded place for those who need to self-regulate in private. This should not have to be the case, however, a lack of education does not help. The downside of these sensory rooms is that they often isolate the neurodiverse student. Sure, a stimuli-free space can be beneficial, but it negates the opportunity to express their feelings to the outside. This is why applying art therapy within academic environments can help break the communicative barrier. The success of art therapy, including its practice in early psychoanalysis, has been recognized since 1942. Sigmund Freud's teachings on the psychoanalytical art theory expresses art's power to reveal the subconscious. Art therapy promotes the visualization of internal emotions, which helps paint a clearer picture of the participant's feelings. This especially benefits members of the autistic community who experience nonverbalism, which can make it impossible for them to express themselves vocally. Art therapy also acts as a vehicle for self-regulation, thus promoting the ease of anxiety and overstimulation. Considering art therapy and its role in psychoanalysis, we can understand how it can be a fruitful resource for the neurodiverse to better communicate their experience to their peers. The VSA, or Very Special Arts, is an example of a successful program which offers art education to neurodiverse and disabled people. The VSA is a performance arts focused initiative established by the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington. Branching across 50 countries worldwide, the VSA emphasizes that everyone has the right to contribute to the arts, regardless of ability or inability. Through their Playwright initiative, neurodiverse people can experiment with various artistic mediums to speak about their atypical experiences. The VSA Arts Festival, which debuted in 1989, compiles the collected work into an exhibition of neurodiverse identity. By showcasing the abnormality of neurodiverse existence, we become acknowledged for our capabilities. To solidify the impact of art therapy, we can compare it to an alternative method, most notably the traditional face-to-face model. This form of treatment can work for many people, but from an autistic point of view, this style may feel confrontational. If you also consider how many autistic individuals struggle with socialization, therapy which heavily relies on communication may not suit the needs of autistic people. By applying art therapy practices to educational and interventional spaces, we can promote a deeper and widespread discussion around the neurodiverse experience. The feeling of isolation is common for autistic people. As a suggestion, an environment which congregates the autistic community can provide a relatable, transparent exchange of experiences, aided by artistic mediums. We live in a generation where digital exposure is more prominent than ever. With the introduction of social platforms such as Instagram, YouTube, and Reddit, self-advocacy as a whole is capable of reaching a wider audience. If we compare to the pre-digital age, the ability to share our experiences has become instantaneous and accessible to everyone. Including news broadcasting, social media has become the go-to form of absorbing worldwide information. Social media platforms have become the hub for artists across all mediums, as it is considered the most efficient tool to branch their work out. Considering this, neurodiverse creators can take advantage of this as a means of self-advocacy and fostering a community that relates to them. Of course, the online realm has seen a rise in troll culture as the power of anonymity takes its toll. To tackle the wave of hatred and disinformation, we, the autistic community, can utilize these platforms with our creativity as a way of correcting the bigoted attitudes towards us. But creativity is not limited to visual expression. The autistic perspective in workspaces should be valued due to our enhanced problem-solving skills, which is 40% faster compared to the neurotypical. As previously discussed, people like Temple Grandin have acquired creative thinking as a conduit, which has led to a prosperous career in the fields of work. If we are to value autistic minds in neurotypically dominated industries, an inclusive environment which accommodates their difficulties and cultivates a positive relationship between the autistic and illistic can help bridge this gap. An example of a major establishment which recognizes the talents of neurodiverse people is Microsoft, which value the creative and innovative skills of the autistic community through its neurodiverse hiring program. By uniting neurodiverse and neurotypical people in the workplace, we can begin to see a change in how society views the autistic community, not as a product of our weaknesses, but of our strengths. To summarize, we have explored the nuance of neurodiversity, its stance in society, and the current false perspectives which surround us. By introducing Grandin's concept of the visual thinker, we have dissected the creative works of autistic artists as tools for self-expression and advocacy. The ways in which creative mediums could be applied to support the well-being of autistic people, such as art therapy, has been discussed. Finally, we have expressed the value of the neurodiverse mind in workspaces and the benefits of modern advances as a vehicle for communicating experiences to the world. Autism should be recognized as a neurotype, not a disease. In a century where we are striving for inclusivity, an overwhelming amount of people still fall into misinformed beliefs, viewing the autistic community as lesser. If we really want progress, acknowledging that autistic people are human beings that are capable of extraordinary things should be the first call of action. Whilst creative mediums as vocal devices will make the autistic voice heard, a lot more reform is still needed for the autistic community to feel accepted within society.